My jacket, Madam Chair.
You got a hot flush?
No, I just. It's later.
No, I turned the heat up.
Did you?
We have a bill here that deals with IDs for folks who are incarcerated. Again. So we're live.
License, there's a process there. Are we live?
We're
We
live.
can talk about that after.
About that.
Turn off the camera.
So welcome folks, this is House Corrections and Institutions Committee. It's our first meeting back with a brand new session and it is January.
I think next.
January 6th, Tuesday, January 6th is our 1 o'clock meeting. And we will be doing a lot more updates this afternoon, both with BGS as well as the Department of Corrections with the new commissioner for that. So we have the commissioner of BGS with us, Wanda Manoli, and you've brought some folks with you. And I'm going to turn it over to you. I'd like a really broad conversation on different things. We have a lot of moving pieces in our capital bill. And just to remind the committee, we do a 2-year capital bill. So last year when we left, we had an FY26 and FY27 budget. What we're going to be doing this year is what's called budget adjustment, which is a mid-course correction, sort of. We know what we've put in for projects and dollar amounts for the FY26. We're halfway through the FY26 budget year. We put projects and dollar amounts for FY27. So right now, what we have before us is what we passed in May. When the governor gives his budget address towards the end of January, he will make, the governor will probably make some adjustments in those projects and dollar amounts, possibly for the FY26, but most likely for the 27 budget. So at this point, commissioners, anyone is from the administration is not at liberty to talk about any proposed changes to the capital budget until the governor proposes his budget. So right now, the framework that we're working in is what we passed in May. That makes sense to folks?
And any potential policy that may go with that language as well.
So I should have probably warned the committee to have your capital bill in front of you or the spreadsheet. I apologize, I'm a little bit behind the 8 ball because it's been a crazy Christmas season for me. And I haven't arrived at the state house yet. So Commissioner, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know we have some high profile projects, 2 of them in particular. The Juvenile Center for Justice Involved Juveniles, which we had hoped to build a facility on state-owned property in Virginia. That has now changed. And then we were hoping to move forward with some property in Essex to start our first step in replacing the women's facility. And that has now changed. So those are the first 2 big ones and then other items.
Yeah.
Commissioner, welcome.
So thank you, Madam Chair and honorable members of the committee. I'm Wanda Manoli, Commissioner of Buildings and General Services. Happy New Year.
Yes.
I will tell you, I feel like we just left, but that's okay. So it is an honor to be here with you today. I just want to quickly introduce my team because you will see them at different times. Emily Koziski is my deputy commissioner and she's doing a phenomenal job and I'm so honored to have her working with me beside me. I have Joe Aja. I know he's new to some of you. Joe is the director of our design and construction team. All of you know Joe. Joe's been with BGS over 30 years or close. Over 40 years. He is one of our investments working through and he does a phenomenal job. And I have really enjoyed my journey with Joe back in this this task. What?
Witness.
Yes, we are, Director. I also have Sabrina. Sabrina is our project man, Sabrina is, kudos to Sabrina. She is the project manager, architect, lead for the AHS project, specifically the, youth facility and the women's correctional facility. And, I'm gonna say this, she's never said it, she probably feels a little bit like a yo-yo. It's gone up and down, up and down and up and down, but, she's been supporting AHS and BGS on these projects and has brought a lot of value and constant messaging and thought process to this. And Cole Barney, you had the opportunity to meet last year. Cole is really my legislative affairs, special projects. Cole does everything and he does Cole does a lot for us. And I had an opportunity, I think I shared with you, but when I was the commissioner of DMV, Cole joined my team and then I think I gave my notice within a month. Was it? Isn't that just so mean? But I actually was
And you
fortunate.
took them with you.
I brought him, yes, because Cole has a, wonderful background in political science and this is, what a great way to learn, even with your degree, what it's like to be in the environment and
The
deal
real
with it.
political science.
So,
What's in the books.
so I am here to do a very brief overview on the Women's Reentry and Correctional Facility and the Youth Stabilization Treatment Facility. Before we get into that, I just want to comment on a couple of things if I can, Madam Chair. I think that, and if we can spend some time, even if it's just you and I and maybe the team, just sort of setting the course for the next couple of weeks on what are some things we could, if you're going to utilize BGS during the transition to the new capital bill proposal or the amendment. I think there are some items we could come in and talk about. And so we could do that on the side. You also have
New person take.
a new committee lead person and just figuring out the relationship with Cole and I apologize, I don't know your name. Tate. And so we're available to do that after if you'd like, or if there's a break.
Time on Thursday or Friday this week.
I will make time for you. How's
We
that?
have some openings on
I
Thursday.
don't know if we'll be, so maybe if maybe when you take a break, if we could touch on a couple of those items and then you could bring them back to your committee or whatever. One that I think would be, I'll just plant a seed is Springfield. So, because I don't think we're ready. We might be ready. The other thing is we could be.
The correctional facility and the property.
Yes, and I just want to talk to you about, and we could talk about it. I'm not sure, I'm looking at Joe. The other thing is, one of the things we always do for your committee is we come in and we take the capital bill last year and the projects that we oversee, and we start to give you an update on those. I don't think, and that update includes Joe does and his team do great PowerPoints and it gives you the bullets and it gives you the chart on the cash. We're just not done that yet, but that we might be able to figure out some of them we could do. And so
Some done, so.
when we have some done, where we just do the overview. Okay. So with that, we have so let's get going. And if you can go to the next slide, are you controlling, Cole? Thank you. So I think this is a summary, but the acts of 24 resolves number 162, section 30 authorized the commissioner to purchase land and to design a correctional facility. The original, the full language talks about contingent authority to purchase land in the event that the Commissioner of Buildings and General Services and Consulting with Corrections is unable to identify appropriately state-owned site locations for the replacement, reentry, and correctional facility. And you also put some criteria in there, in addition to the criteria of correctionals. You said it needed to be near support services. programming, work opportunities needed to facilitate successful reentry into the community. I'm reading this to you, in a reasonable proximity. That's key, in the reasonable proximity to the existing workforce to facilitate retention and continuity of experienced staff and near existing and potential future public transit services. So, as you know, we worked very, very closely with the community of Essex, and I will tell you, and what we were working on them with was the request to change the zoning for two sites that were in Essex. So the state-owned property in Essex met that criteria. It was the closest property that really met that criteria.
But part of our criteria, not listed here, we need to look at state-owned property
Yes,
first. And then
transition.
transition to purchasing property if we had to, but the
That's-
focus to begin with was to look at state-owned property
That's right.
across the state.
Well, we did using that criteria, which really sort of kept it in the Chittenden County area. Okay. So we worked, and I just want for all of you to know, working with the Essex planning team, they were, while we ended up not getting our zoning change, I just want to say that they were really, they were very receptive. They asked really good questions. We responded to them. So the community was good to work with. At the end of the day, in October 25, the Essex Planning Commission denied our state's request. What is important to understand is that within Essex, the property is zoned for use, right? Well, every community. And the only property that we owned in Essex that had zoning for correctional use was Woodside. So basically, we're asking them to do an overlay or review and extend that to the Essex property. And I think all of you read the news, and unfortunately, it didn't work out. So after that decision in October, BGS sort of reevaluated everything. And we said, okay, what are our next steps? Working with corrections. And I'm just giving you highlights, Madam Chair. So we said, do we re-engage with Essex? And we talked about the advantages and the risks. Do we look at Windsor State Prison? Right, because we're looking at everything. Well, it doesn't meet the criteria, and there's been other studies and other commitments and other thoughts around Windsor. So we said, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So then we went back to, can we rebuild at the South Burlington location where the women's existing facility is? Because it meets some of this criteria, but not all of it. And there are advantages, but the risk really outweighed the advantages. And I want to highlight this one. The site is very limited. We would have constraints on how we would design. It would have to be a linear design. It would have to be multiple floors. We don't think we could get the outdoor activity area that they really need. And we were really questioning how the reentry program would align with a building like that. And the cost of potentially relocating the shell game of where do you relocate the individuals that are currently under the jurisdiction of DOC over a 2-year period. So it wasn't, so these are viable, but they're not the best interests of the program. And then we went back to, do we look at a new site? Do we take the design and what we've invested in this project and all of the studies and everything, and we just look at a new site? And we also, just so you know, we talked about the split of a reentry program and the correctional facility. That's really an outcome of what you do. It's not a preference of DOC, and I don't want to speak to their detailed on the programming. So using the site criteria and working with DOC and really talking about the programs and the importance, again, with this criteria, it's really a focus in Chittenden County for the most part.
So then I would think that the question before us as we go forward on the legislative end is twofold. Do we look at the site,
Pardon me?
do we look at the site criteria and change it or not? I mean, this came out of our committee back, I think it was probably in 23, 24, 23.
24 is when I believe you.
We did some work also in 22 and 23 on some of this. So do we look at this site criteria that we put in previous capital bills and tweak it, change it, throw it away completely, do something different? That's one thing. The other thing is, do we limit it to state-owned property? Do we say, okay, now we go out and buy property?
We expanded that, didn't
Hmm?
we? We gave permission to buy.
Yes,
Yes,
Yeah.
but do we just really just say, don't bother looking at state-owned property anymore, just go out and buy property? I think those are the two big pieces before us this legislative session.
well, Madam
our
Chair,
base-
you may want to you may want to talk about it, so let me tell you where we're at. Because that's really important, right? So based on that criteria and the work with DOC, we made the decision, because of the authority that you've given us, to pursue and develop an RFP and to go out and do a land search with that criteria. And more, and so previously, we focus on state-owned property, number one. And then we used a broker to kind of give us a list of other property that was out there that we could kind of say, oh, this meets the needs or not. We have developed, we have not, we're in the process of issuing it. I don't think you've issued it yet, correct, Rena? So we have developed an RFP and we are seeking land options with all of that criteria and some other criteria that DOC has set forth. And we're finalizing the RFP and we're getting ready for it to be posted. And you'll see, so I thought it was important to show you how much money you've appropriated to this project and what we've expended, and to demonstrate we have a balance of $15 million, which we can use to purchase land and we can use to take the design on a particular site and really start figuring everything out.
Troy?
Can I just get a clarification on what the RFP is for? It's finding somebody to help you find the land?
No, the RFP is what we've changed. So I'll just go back to make sure I'm clear. With the original language, we focused on the state-owned. And we also just did a search with our brokers and property management. We use brokers to say, what do you have for sale? What's out there? Industrial that we could be developed or just raw land. What, instead of just going to a broker and saying, give us a list of what's available, we're actually doing a request for proposals on specific needs for a correctional facility. So that's the difference. So it will be a bid. It will be a request for proposals for us to explore and to understand the detail behind them to move forward with potentially purchasing. So we've moved forward because of the authority you've
Yep.
given us, that if we did find a piece of property and everyone agreed, we would go through the normal process of procuring that because we already have the authority. And I was trying to show, and here's the money that we have left that's available. I just want to say this is our estimated timeline on the next steps based on the request for the proposal is early April to complete review and negotiate on properties. And the other piece that I just want to point out, because I don't think we can quite get into it, at the Joint Justice Oversight Committee, there was some discussion on potential language around zoning requirements for critical state facilities. we're not in a position yet to talk if we're going to suggest that policy change, but we heard the committee and we have discussed it internally. I just can't tell you where that's at this point.
Can I just clarify? So this would state any land you buy would not necessarily have the zoning hurdles that we had with the most recent.
No, it could. It depends on where it is. So.
But the statute change,
Oh, that could eliminate, it's for, requirements for critical state facilities, yes.
okay,
Where we could build regardless of their zoning.
right.
That's right. So I do believe that is gonna be one of the items that, this committee is probably going to want
Oh,
to explore.
along with GovOps, I know that proposal may be percolating in some bills that may be produced, but
Yeah.
that would go to GovOps, would not go to us because it deals with municipal laws.
Yes.
So, but it's
Yeah.
a direct result of juvenile center and the women's correctional facility, and it's also the leftover, the Newberry. Kevin,
And because you're moving in this direction, I would assume, but I don't like to assume, that there are no government-owned facilities, properties that could be usable if we tweak the requirements.
So I think that goes back to, we looked at that once we were notified by Essex. And so so we looked at two state properties. We looked at Windsor and, Windsor doesn't meet the criteria. It's, when you talk about it, and, through this committee over the years, you've directed Buildings and General Services to do multiple best use studies of that site and that facility. And in partnership with A&R, and so we stepped away from that up because I think there are, and the chair probably could talk about it more specifically, other feelings and obligations or commitments maybe on that property. And then the other state-owned is the existing site.
So going out, we're gonna end up with two white elephants. We're gonna have the existing state land with building on there that's,
I would suspect once we had a new facility and we took occupancy, that you would be selling that property and
talking about the
as,
current
yes, that's
South Burlington
yes.
facility.
This committee or others could redirect that property to be used for something else or potentially sell it. We haven't come to that conclusion at this time,
no, I understand that, but I mean, that would be the.
but I don't think it would be a white elephant.
No, because the land is prime. It's not the building, it's the land where it's located. So we have some more questions. Connor and then Joe, and then Will.
Good to see you, Commissioner.
It's wonderful to see you.
Um,
And I'm not sick. I have allergies, so,
Us.
this building.
We understand.
Yes.
So just with the adjusted timeline, and I know it won't be too accurate, like what's the best case scenario for when can we close Chittenden, if everything goes according to plan?
Well, so if we're successful with the RFPs and negotiating on, new property, our goal would be to have that wrapped up in April. And I believe it's a 24-month project. I'm looking at just roughly.
So we estimate about 3 to 5 year permitting process. And that in addition, design would about 2 years would take place at the same time with 2 years for construction.
Okay, so that wasn't clear. So between, with having land and doing all of our design documents and everything, I think 4 years is probably,
4 to 5.
If all goes well.
if all goes well.
The plan.
And I think what was just confusing is that we just threw in the permitting and we said 3 years for permitting. And so I can't say to you that I'm not saying to you, I know that it's 3 years. It depends on where the land is. It depends on what we're going to need for permitting. So the worst case scenario, which Sabrina is describing, is you could have a 3-year permitting process. That between Act 250, local permit, all of our permits. Is that fair? You're doing the worst case scenario.
Yes.
She's doing the worst case scenario.
So let me give some perspective here and maybe
4 years is the average represent.
help me on this. We started work on this in prior to COVID, 2018. 2019, we started putting money in to start 18, we started saying we got to replace the Chittenden facility. That's
2016, when I was still here, you were talking about it.
yeah, but we actually put money in the capital bill to start that process. It got, wait, it got taken away, part of it in the Senate. But we've been working on this since 17, 18. And here we are,
If you want.
8, 9 years later.
Please.
So, you know,
Yeah,
it is what it is. Joe, whoops, Joe, and then, well,
So going back to Essex and specifically, is this Essex Town or Essex Junction?
Essex Town?
So it didn't get past the planning commission,
No, no.
and so,
And what didn't get passed is I'm gonna use the word change of use, which my team
I
gets
understand
very frustrated, but really taking the existing and shifting, the use to the new site.
so was there already discussed, I don't know how big the former Woodside site is,
we've already converted that to the 6
Yeah.
residential.
but I don't know how many total acres the site is.
There's 6,
Yeah,
Not very big.
But there's no extra acreage to swap, the land swap.
Yeah.
so there's about 6 acres of land, I believe.
it's
Yeah.
about 10, but
About
but most
10.
of it is wetlands, it's totally built out.
Little bump
Okay, so my question was gonna be if you could
to a
swap that,
swap.
change of use, and that's not a. that's not a-
And in reality, I don't think, and even if we could, I think we are customer driven. And we try to, when we make an investment in a facility of this type, programming is really important. And when we built we took a men's correctional facility and converted it to a woman's. Having, the programming is somewhat different, but the existing site in South Burlington and Woodside today, if it were available to try to build what is needed for the services that we're trying to acquire provide, the site has limitations.
No, I understand that. I just didn't
Okay.
know if there was enough extra acreage at Woodside where maybe you could swap.
No, we probably would have
swap
gone
zoning.
there.
Yeah.
What's the minimum acreage you need for the women's facility?
I don't know if we necessarily have said a minimum, but we are looking at about 20 acres. Because as you know, you want expansion, you want the ability to do whatever you need to do on that. Plus, we have outdoor activities.
Well,
I can't find the exact sheet that had the 10-year projection timeline on it, but my question had to do with the $16 million that have already been appropriated. Is that in addition to the $90 million that we were projecting to spend?
no, that would go towards it.
Okay, so this is all for the RFP for the land acquisition.
This is for design, this is for land purchase, this is for multiple pieces. But really what happens, we're successful and we're all in agreement, this 15 million would start to get spent very fast. And once we make that decision that this is the piece of property, this is where we're gonna go, that's when you're gonna see your future capital bills impacted to come up to. There was 90 at one time, and I'm just gonna say this as your commissioner, those are estimates at a point in time. If that $90 million was estimated in 2023,
It's state-owned property.
but even we can't guarantee the cost would be 90 million today.
And then my second follow-up question about Essex. So I remember having read that they declined to do the change of use. Is there an ability for them to go back and review that? Or is it kind of a done deal with this?
So we looked at, I can tell you the advantages and the risks that we did. We had selected the site. We could have continued with the design and we might have seen potentially if the money was appropriated, Well, we looked at it as we probably actually would delay, we would gain a year if we went to the Essex site in this time frame of 4 to 5 years. The risk is they still could deny our request. And our process in working with Essex took about a year. There was a change in leadership. There was a change in the planning commission. We had to realign and be on the same page. We had a change in commissioner of corrections. It could, we said it could be, we've been perceived that the state wasn't listening. And I will tell you, as your Commissioner of Buildings and General Services, we worked really, really hard to hear their questions. They gave us written questions, and we responded to those openly and honestly. I think part of, and this is me sharing with you, part of our challenge, and for the members that have been here for a while, the last time we did a correctional facility was the Springfield Correctional Facility. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. But at that time, we have a process where we partner with the legislature, the administration, and the community, and we come up with an MOU, an operating MOU, because we are placing a correctional facility within a community. And we have these agreements with every community. And you go through things where you talk about transportation or sidewalks, or maybe the water and sewer plant need to be expanded. And you come to an agreement of what we're going to invest in outside of just building the building. But then everything's dependent on appropriations, and everyone has to agree. This process is known, and what I experienced with the youth facility and with the correctional facility is that they want that agreement now. And we said, we're willing to come to the table, but right now we just got to get the change of use in place. Because if you're not going to give us that, then that's an enormous amount of work, because after that permit, we still have to go through all of the other permitting processes. And that's where we sat and negotiated. So I think, when we worked with Essex, they were asking us all the right questions. They were putting on the table all of the things that were important for them to understand and know, and how we would impact. We just didn't have the answers yet, because we were just trying to move towards getting this use change so we could start truly exploring that facility. So when I say, I think, that we weren't listening, we were listening. It's just what comes first. Do we now, because permitting has changed so much since we built Springfield, because as part of it, do we try to engage in this up front? And there's risk with that. I'm going to say to you, as the representatives of the state, it's hard to make a commitment on something that you really don't know what's going to be the cost for 3 or 5 years down the road. And, Emily and I'm looking at her and I have really discussed with moving forward with, the RFP, some ideas of how we can engage early and really outline what that process is going to be. And that's part of our commitment to you, instead of waiting until we get there and then they start asking for it. So that was a long answer. I think it was a little passionate, but it's important. Communities want to know this. This is a critical structure for the state of Vermont. And we've got to find a way for all of us to partner in this. It can't just be BGS standing over here in DOC. It's got to be the community and the legislature for this particular type of facility, and BGS. So I was long-winded, but.
Well,
Now I have a follow-up question about the criterion as well. I'm sure this was not designated, but maybe it was, and I'm just not familiar with it. When you mentioned the Windsor facility being repurposed and the South Burlington facility, assuming going down there, in the criteria, did retention of correctional staff make its way into that? Because one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, I'm not an expert in the contract.
Okay.
But I believe, I don't believe, I do know there, I believe it's 30 miles. So we are very sensitive to that because when you go, if your workstation, so your designated workstation is South Burlington, and you go outside of a 30-mile radius, I think it's a radius, I'm looking at you.
Geographical riff, essentially, yeah.
Then you, you have the right as an employee to say, I'm not gonna go any further, and you get this geographical rip, and I'm not the expert on that. So that's really important because, this facility, I think, I can't speak for corrections, but I think they have a pretty good staff at the Women's Correctional Facility. Very well trained. They have really good, what I understand, partnerships with the local businesses, which really supports your concept and your idea around reentry. So Windsor, that would be, that's another added lift because all of those employees would have the right to choose to move or to go after bump somebody. Yeah, yeah.
Figured, I just want to. Sure.
Sean,
Hello.
are you awake?
What if we covered Chittenden and Copper? 20 more years, I think.
Be quicker and less expensive.
So I visited the women's facility, Troy. And you was there.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, I remember I was the one who drove up during the snowstorm.
Brian was there. So I'm just curious. Do you have any data about why that wouldn't work there?
I believe that you should talk to the Commissioner of Corrections. This is about
John?
yes. So you could go up. There are many program reasons and why it is not the right solution for the future correctional facility.
Now,
Because everything else is there. It's there. You're not gonna meet, people aren't gonna give you a time about being there. It's there.
Yeah, I think I think it would be difficult to, I think there's also some concern about the reentry, the focus on the programming of reentry, trying to use that site for, both programs. And but I would prefer that I would prefer that you have that conversation with Commissioner.
Do they own the parking lot, the secondary parking lot that we park in?
We own,
that too.
we
That's the part, yes.
BGS do.
And is there there's a bunch of swampland in there and stuff, right?
Just own that parking lot.
That's it.
The rest are-
Several, let's not all of us talk at the same time. Thank you. Several, I know, but several years ago, we had to do something with the wetlands and with Act 250, and we had to transfer, I believe, some of that land to the city of South Burlington. Is that correct? And that's why Sabrina is emphasizing just the parking lot.
Got it. Yeah, because yeah.
so that's not to say that at some point, depending how the RFP plays out, we just don't know. But I feel that we're back at square one, per se. That's not to say that the current facility could not be rehabbed into a reentry facility. And then you have the medium secure incarcerated facility built somewhere else. Those are options. The other option is you do both on a particular piece of parcel. Or another option is they're on separate parcels and you sell the South Burlington property because that's prime location.
So I will share with this committee, we've had some excellent working meetings with DOC talking about those. And so yes, those are all options. The preference is one facility because you will have maximized staffing. Instead, once you go two facilities, this is important, right? You have two different operating costs, you have a different staffing level need, you have a different transportation need, you have duplication of space. So that is really, DOC has put a lot of thought into that. And that's where I think, understanding their programming. If we go, when we get our request, for, you know, when we get a response to the request, we might not get any options. So guess what we do? We sit back down with DOC and we say, well, you know what? We may only have one option. And again, and you have to look at the whole scope of the project and the whole time frame of the project. And you know, South Burlington brings its own challenges. And one of them is if you were to demolish
Where you put.
and rebuild, what is your cost?
Yep.
What is the time? How do you address the current individuals?
And that right there is where this committee plays in. Because we have to weigh all those factors, because we don't know what will be in the governor's recommended budget, but there could be a line item in there in FY 27 for a women's correction, more money to go towards replacing the Chittenden facility. I'm not saying that there will be, but there might be. So if there is, then we have to weigh as a committee, what direction are we going in? We're the ones that will then be in the driver's seat, more or less, based on testimony from BGS, based on testimony from DOC, and based on what we know in our capacity sitting in this room to make these decisions. And you have to weigh the programming and the structure of the building versus the cost, because at some point you may really want to go down a certain path, but the cost may be prohibitive.
Well,
Then you've got to make the decision as a committee, where do we go from there?
right.
So that's what's going to be before us. And we don't know where we're going to be in a month or 2 months from now. But I just want to lay this out, that there's a lot of thinking that we're going to have to do as a whole committee here on how we move forward. If we move forward, we may decide not to move forward.
I would think the last thing we want to do is have another facility, but frankly, we have more facility than we can, it looks like conceivably properly maintain or upgrade now. So if anything, you would want to have fewer individual facilities, not additional facilities.
Well, we know from an operating standpoint, from a staffing standpoint, one facility, right, is obviously more cost effective and makes sense. And we have to remember, if we don't have a plan for vacant facilities, then you have to still continue to pay the heat, pay the electricity, maintain and keep it basically in cold storage, so.
Connor?
Oh, sure. As the timeline moves out, you know, and like as the chair says, we're feeling like back at square one. Are there like any discussions of like an interim plan? Not that I know what that looks like, but I'm just cognizant that like every week, every day in a facility is like an eternity for the people like working and living in it. It's and the cost of duct taping this thing together like for a few more
What
years.
is the deferred maintenance on this? 15 million?
I don't, we can get back to you. I don't want to make a guess on that. Maybe Joe can find it. But so there's not. I don't feel like we're going back to the beginning. And I go to your appropriations. We have spent we have invested money, time, detail, specific details into the design and model. With the RFP, we'll be presenting the outlay of that. So you're not going to be starting right from the beginning on your design and what it is. You're going to have to modify depending on what the site is. And we don't know what the permitting is. You know, it depends on the piece of property and what permits we would have to go through. And this type of construction is a unique, even though we've talked about it's a softer construction because of the model, it's still a correctional facility. It's, you know, it's going to be a building that you're investing in for many, 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 many years. So I don't feel that you are going back to A. I think
Now, B plus.
I'm gonna, let's say, we got 5 years, so I think we've got a C plus. You know what, we are gonna have a really good idea by the time we wrap up the RFP. And you know, we wrap up the RFP and we're saying we have them evaluated by April. That means we'll get them a little bit sooner. But I will say to you, Madam Chair, if you truly think that you're gonna change all of this criteria, I'm concerned. And what I'm concerned about is it costs Vermont businesses, it doesn't matter if you own land, if you're a developer, if you're a construction company, if you're an oil company bidding on the state. The cost to put a bid together for the state is very high for a business. And so it is really important for me to say, we're moving forward with it, because to ask a business to make an investment and respond to our proposals, and then all of a sudden say, we're not going to do it, is not a good reflection of the state doing business with the industry. So I'm just really sensitive to that, and I'm hoping there is support to let us move forward in the way that we are, and let's see what we get for a bid.
When do you anticipate the RFP going out? You're finalized? it?
Well, Sabrina is actually finalizing it. We haven't done an internal review with DOC. We've had discussions, but to make sure everything is there. And I think what is important is we are providing more information in our RFPs than we have in the past. So, because we don't want someone just to give us a list of land and then, Sabrina has to go out and figure, what is the sewer? What is the water? Do they have capacity? Et cetera. We're trying to get that information up front so we can make a stronger, better decision. Yeah, of course you may.
One other thing is that we're being upfront about the planned use of the parcel, so that
Yes.
it is for correctional facility use, so instead of just in the past, we did some land
Thank you.
searches through a broker without disclosing what the use is, and that doesn't get us viable properties necessarily, right? Because there are some that are just clearly not going to be suitable.
Right.
Or might have zoning improvements that are just not going to work for us. So we're just putting that out there, like.
That's right.
Seeking land for this specific purpose, and we're
Yeah.
hoping that with that clarity, we'll get better direction on whether we're gonna get something or not.
Yeah, and Emily, thank you for bringing that. That is so important, because now they're going to look at it and they're going to also tell us these are all that there will be some specific detail. So I think that's important too.
So I'm trying to get the time frame here in connection with our legislative session. So you're anticipating going out in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks with the.
I think 3 weeks is fair by the time
End of July, end of January.
Yep.
July.
and so a month
And
and
then
a half.
end of February or so, you'd get the responses.
Yeah.
You have an idea.
And then and so we are sensitive about evaluations, because that's a documented, fair, open process. And so that's why we're saying we're giving ourselves really a month.
So in March is usually the time, February and March, end of February, we do markup.
Yep.
And then we get the bill done middle of March, middle 20th of March. So at that point, we'd have more direction in terms of where we're headed or not headed for that. It's a long-term process, folks, and then you may end up with no responses to the RFP. We may. And then what do you do?
Well, that's
We'll know
when,
that by the end of February.
yes, and that's where we sit down again with our partners and we say, okay, this is, what that would say is based on all of that criteria.
Criteria is an issue.
The standalone, if there's nothing that's not available,
Yeah.
Then
Then what?
then we gotta have that hard discussion. That's, what I think it is. Or we choose to go back to one of the previous sites. I mean, but I do think, everybody liked the idea of the community that we were working with and that we were looking at. But I think all of you know that, there was a lot more, we were gonna have to put on-site septic, which we didn't realize on the state property in the beginning. There's, issues with the capacity and what they have for the community of Essex and their water and sewer plant, their proposal, I'm just summarizing because I did listen to them, their housing and what they want to do. I think you all know they didn't even support the Amazon relocation. So.
Kevin?
Did you ever describe the reasons Essex said no?
No, I didn't. I mean, they said, well, they said no. I think where it really came from is it was really, it's about this negotiation and what are we going to get and what does it mean? And how does it impact our community and looking at their housing? It was all of those decisions. It wasn't a letter saying we denied you because of X. It was just in general, they voted no, not to support.
Okay,
I don't think a planning commission they're not adjudicating. They don't have to.
no, I understand they don't have to, but if we knew what their objections were, then we could, that's important lessons learned.
Part of it could be they wanted to know what the state was gonna give them.
That's what I said. I think.
before we even had access to the land.
And I was open and I said, when they say we sort of we weren't listening. I think that some of what they wanted a commitment from, we could not provide through this MOU. I call it an MOU, but it's, through this agreement that we have with other communities. And that's where we, the state, have to say, going forward, we have to change our process and how we engage on aligning those things and when it comes in. Because BGS can sit down and have the discussions and capture everything they want. It still takes the agency of administration, the governor and the legislature
I
to
know.
agree to and to fund what they want. So it's a process.
But if they don't tell us what they want, we can't even
Well, they
think of it.
did,
They did.
but we didn't have access to the land. That's the issue. We didn't have access, so you could give them this, and then they could still say.
Yeah, I mean, they were looking
There
at,
might be
they were looking at transportation, they were looking at sidewalks, they wanted to know about additional support for the Essex local, for the emergency services, for the policing. How would I just said their rate of pay in my head. How would the building impact their
Friendless,
the money we give them?
pilot.
The pilot, we were trying to do the best estimates on that. There were multiple.
And we didn't have the assurance we'd be able to get the zone.
And I didn't have the authority to
To go.
negotiate.
Right. Cause you gotta find the money through the appropriations process in the building.
Right.
And you gotta sign off. The executive branch, the fifth floor has to sign off. And the legislature has to sign off. And then you can't really do that because you still don't know if the zoning is gonna be changed. So it's a chicken and egg situation at that point.
So would you like to
Virgins.
move on to Virgins?
Yes, please.
Okay, so thank you. We'll be available. I just want to say, I think we're in a good place. Do want to close with this. I think our team and DOC are working really well together and we're exploring this. So I want to say that. So the Youth Stabilization Treatment Center, some call it the Green Mountain, what do they call it? Green Mountain Campus? I won't call it that because I don't want to get into naming of state facilities. So I refer to it as the Youth Stabilization Treatment Center. And I just gave trauma to Emily again. I think all of you know this, so I'm gonna summarize. A decision, quite a few years ago was to do a build to suit a developer agreement for the youth center because you have two very expensive buildings. You have a replacement of the youth facility and you have the women's correctional reentry program. And those two are very large and demanding on the capital bill. So a business decision to go out with a developer was made a few years ago. And so BGS came to a place that Virgins, there was a whole process done. There were RFPs with developers, and Virgins as one of the options, the state-owned land in Virgins was an option you could bid on and put a proposal. So the Virgins site was chosen. We worked with a really good developer that's been very good with us. We had to go through the work with Virgins to expand the PUB, which is the,
It's the public district where public.
for about a 10 parcel piece of land that we own in Virgins. Again, I will share with this committee, they wanted to get into the negotiation. They wanted these agreements. They were told we would sort of do this, and then I came in and I probably tossed that ball a little bit, saying, well, first of all, let's get the designation, then let's go do the negotiation. And, they had several lists of demands and wants that they wanted, and they wanted us to commit to that before, and we weren't in a position to. I can't commit to that and then sign a contract, it doesn't align. At the end of the day, we decided to step away, from the Virgins property. And that was a decision that we made. And we reset, and working with DOC, we looked at the DCF, sorry, I'm back. Thank you, ma'am. We looked at, the original bids. Could we go to the next bidder? We looked at multiple different options, and for a number of reasons, my recommendation, and this is the way we want, is that we go back out to bid. And in this bid for a developer to do the build to suite, and then we lease it back with the option to buy. We were much more specific on permitting. We put that responsibility on the developer. Location again was really important to DCF. And what the programming is, and we had design. So a lot more information was provided for a response to us. And I think that's really important. And I'm going to focus right now on the permitting, because one of the things I couldn't figure out is, why is Sabrina doing this piece of the permitting and then the developer does the other piece? The developer is saying, we have this land, it needs X, Y, and Z, it meets this criteria, let's let the developer lead and we're going to partner. So that's a big shift with this one. We put out a proposal in October. We received the proposals in November, and on December 8th, we selected a proposal. I am here to tell you that I cannot discuss in detail, because we are moving, I just signed a letter of intent notifying them, and now we have to move into negotiations. And this is a little bit different than a construction contract, because we're negotiating a development agreement that turns into a long-term lease. So we have not sat down with the recipients that received the letter of intent and started to negotiate. But what I can tell you is we got a solid response for this facility. And to me, that is really, really, really important.
You sound optimistic.
I am optimistic. I really am. I mean, I can't even say we're going to have it built. So what I can tell you is that the way we wrote the RFP, we would potentially, if all permits, if all stars align, that we potentially could go to construction, Joe, in September of 26.
Yes, that's correct.
When will we know?
When will you know where it is and who it is?
Yeah, if everything, that everything is, the next step is,
Well, right now it's, negotiations are gonna go great. So, with negotiations being wonderful, I'm looking at Emily and Joe. It might be
A few months.
March,
2 months, yeah.
again, March.
Yeah, but I think with confidence, Madam Chair, we have a site.
Yep.
DCF is excited about the location. The location meets all of the criteria. There are elements of the site we don't know about, but what the developer, but the developer has to make all of this happen. There are contents of their RFP, some cost, time frame, certain things, standard language. We have not sat down with them and said, this is what it is, and some negotiations.
So what's different about this particular project is what's called a design build. So it's the developer that fronts the money. They build the building. They work with the design with DCF and BGS, but they build it. So there isn't the capital budget implications to it. But what it does do, it shifts it to appropriations because there will now be lease payments. Because we won't own the building.
We have an option to buy, and this time around, we asked for and my team's gonna correct me, I think we did a 5, 10, 15, but we've done an analysis, even if you bought it in 3 years, if I'm correct, or did we do 3, 5, 10 and 15?
I think that come back to us.
Right, but we've actually looked,
Or the,
Opt to purchase, if we opt to purchase, that would come back to us.
yes, yes. And I will tell you, you want to
legislative.
right, but if you were to purchase and take so what the agreement is the average maintenance, the upkeep, the site, all of that is managed by the developer. So we would be responsible for long-term maintenance damage, or if one of the individuals that were housed there did some significant damage, then we have to do it. So this is an all-inclusive lease, which includes heating, electricity, operations, snow blowing, long-term care, the maintenance on the roof, all of those pieces, that's theirs. But our response, yes, in the lease rate, but our responsibility in negotiating is to make sure that they do maintenance, annual maintenance upkeep. I'm just going to use that as an example because I don't want them not to invest in the roof or do anything for 10 years out.
Then we buy it and then you have to do the work.
Correct. So there's that, but, and then the operating side, which you'll have to talk to DCF, is their agreement with their company on how they staff and how they operate. So I will tell you, they're excited about it. What we don't know is the permitting. But I think the difference is with confidence, I think, I believe, based on what I read is that, they have a really good working relationship with their community and permitting should go easier. So, and that's the other piece. I'm just, how I am with this committee. I'm pretty direct. And Emily and I have discussed this. We've never had this existing type of agreement with Woodside on what we contributed.
Yeah.
And so I'm still baffled why we would be doing that again with a youth facility. I think there's this impression that it may be considered in the same category as corrections. But I think that's something else with this one, we have to figure this out because the standard of what we do with communities where we house correctional facilities was assumed we would do the same with this youth facility. I think that's part of where
It's a disconnect.
everything kind of fell apart.
Excuse me. So last session, you showed us that facility. It was like Naylor and Brain had drawn it up or somebody like that had done it.
We hired an architect
Yeah.
and
It was a nice facility.
so that was included in the RFP.
Okay, so it was because I was looking for the pictures of it because you had
Okay.
presented that.
Yeah, so what we presented in the RFP when we went out is we've already invested in this design.
Okay, got it.
And the team ensured there was language and what I've learned from Sabrina is that this is the design. It will be tweaked, it can be tweaked. And there's a certain agreement we have to do with the architect because of licensing, but that is the design.
Okay,
So the
so,
proposal were the same.
but if I'm not mistaken, part of the issue in Virgin's before is they didn't want 19-year-olds housed there. Has that issue been, has there been conversations that have been agreeable to both parties?
I'm not sure if it was necessary. I'm not aware of the age specific. I think there was a policy issue in general on what is the population that is going to be housed there based on, I think, some stuff that was occurring here.
CH.
Raise, right, so I think it was that, I will, if I were to summarize Virgin's is they definitely believe because of the age and the population that there was going to be much more demand on their emergency services and their policing. And they wanted to have a compensation for that. And I know that, and I don't think that DCF necessarily agreed with the impact. I think the data shows something different. So I don't want to get it like into I don't want to misspeak, Representative. So I know raise the age was definitely a concern. And then who was going to be housed there and what was the impact on those emergency services and policing?
So you had 750,000, you got 372 left.
And we're fine with where we are right now, Madam Chair.
We'll know more as the session progresses.
Yeah, no, I guess maybe we don't know yet, but what do you anticipate us needing to make decisions on with this session, or is it just?
You really don't have, I mean, unless you decide that you want to just change the overall policy, then
Right.
you're putting us back.
It's mostly just FYI, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
we're really, we're right now where I feel we're in a really comfortable, solid place. You've given us the authority that we need. I'm gonna look to Emily because Emily and I have so many discussions. She's my memory. I don't think, do we need, Emily and I had discussed that we're gonna need specific development language or no? We've got it. We've already got the authority because of the lease.
What you got is 372 left. And the question will be, how much of that do you need for remaining spending?
We need all of this to take this to,
The next level?
well, yes. Yeah, there's no money here to be reallocated, Madam Chair.
I'm always looking.
I know you were. I'm just, there's no money to be reallocated here.
Wildlife money.
Absolutely not.
We had like 3 million, we pulled that.
Yeah, I mean, what it does is it shifts the dollars to the development agreement that, and to what the cost is and what that lease payment is going to
And that
be.
comes out of DCF's budget.
Right, it goes to appropriation and out of that. What we do know, is that we do know that the development types of agreements do cost us more money. But when you really start breaking it out and analyzing it, and you think about some of the long-term maintenance, it still costs more money, but maybe the gap isn't as big as we thought. It also is having a positive impact on your demands in the capital bill.
Takes the pressure off. But we have to be very cognizant that we don't work in a silo here because we know we're shifting the cost to the big bill and to general fund and to DCF's budget. That we know because they're paying lease payments.
Oh, I mean,
On the other hand, if we were building this on the capital bill, pressure on our capital bill, but then our debt service, which is a line item in the general fund, would also be impacted.
And you would increase BGS's budget and potentially DOC's depending on what they do, because a building of this size and quality means we need staff to staff it, operate it, maintain it, the maintenance. So all of that goes in. Without getting into one of the things that we've added and we've brought back is an internal financial analysis, right? Looking at preliminary numbers. So we are cognizant of that. We are engaged with finance and management. We are engaged with DOC, the Secretary of Administration, and BGS, because you are absolutely right. You have, just because it's maybe the right way to build it, everyone has to understand what is the cost, because no matter what, if we owned it or you do this, it's a bigger facility. It's a facility you don't have right now.
Mhm.
And so it's going to cost us.
Mhm.
It's going to be part of doing business. So there is a cost involved.
Questions, thoughts?
Wow.
So we are at the end of time because we do have the Commissioner of Corrections that's going to be coming in, but
We're going down. He's been in Senate institutions. I wish we had been here together. So we're flipping. Yeah.
Any other questions? Either one.
Oh, I think we'll see the commissioner again.
Oh, she's gonna be here. She's gonna be here. Anything else? Because I do want to take a quick 10-minute break for folks.
And I do want at least 3 minutes with you if I can.
And then if folks, Cole or whomever can coordinate with Tate to make sure when we do scheduling, what needs to be involved here.
And if I could offer, maybe when we go back to the office, Cole, Joe, Emily and I can kind of come up with a list of some items that we could have Cole send to Tate, then you could pick. Where we know that are some of those updates.
Because we do have time this Thursday and Friday morning. We're not working Friday afternoon. But we do have time on Thursday and Friday for you folks.
So let us, I know Joe's already thinking about it.
Because you know us, we'll ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Anything else before we get off of Zoom for the time being? Take a 10-minute break. Thank you for that.
Thank you, and thank you for welcoming us into your committee.
It's a good